I got your deck list, I'm cooking the goo, dear Ecclesia, count me in.
Oh, I get it. Doing a Dear Maria parody for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk list. Oh, little did you know that All Time Low hardly qualifies as punk. It only does if your only exposure to the genre is a single Warped Tour.
Oh, so punk has to have an explicitly anti-government message now. Sounds a little like gatekeeping to me. When I was a kid, being punk was about having fun with your friends. I may not be King Scarlet, but I think this parody is more than adequate for a TMT intro. Good evening, Jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. While nothing is coming close to the metagame dominance of Sprite, Tier Element, and MathMech in a post-POT environment, there's been a mad race to determine what'll inhabit the top of Tier 3. Will it be Fluondereeze? Will it be Eldritch? Will it be Exosister? No. Well, one thing it could be is an archetype of starters you may not know is more than just a magical dragon machine. Presenting Punk. So here's the list. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck just got a huge redesign, but it's still the #1 place to go for deck building, card databases, and a wealth of strategy articles. I personally use it to post the Chalice Slime monthly deck breakdowns, so give it a look at www.ygoprodeck.com. With that, let's peer at Punk. Punk is a series of monsters based on both the cyberpunk aesthetic and traditional Japanese forms of art: theater, epic poems, court music, and paintings. This kicks ass. And these neon monsters have some of Yu-Gi-Oh's most inspired artwork ever. In practice, they've got one extremely good thing going for them. Their one-card starter is a level 3 Psychic, making them the most effective E-Tele users since Krebens. For the past few months, they've been used almost exclusively to synchro summon exactly Chaos Ruler, the chaotic magical dragon, then make Halka afterwards, often without even committing to your normal summon. Until now! Power of the Element gives us 2 new punks to play with: Dragon Drive, an 8-star synchro that adds a psychic monster from your deck to your hand, and Extreme Session, a field spell that's also Pot of Greed. While still an explosive splash in decks like Tier Element, these 2 tools were enough to power Punk into the metagame as a standalone deck. With unbelievable access to a high-level synchro pool and powerful tuners like Shinobi Necro and Jet Synchron, this deck has the ability to access negates, spins, and even Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity from the most mediocre of setups. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First up, the punks. We've got 3 copies of Ogre Dance. This card isn't perfect, but it is Dark Attribute. Your attributes don't line up fantastically for Chaos Ruler. You need a light and a dark, and your normal line only necessarily goes through a light. This is a great way to ensure you have the other material without having to get lucky off of Chaos Ruler. We've got 3 copies of Foxy Tune. I don't need to tell you how powerful this card is. 3 copies of Deer Note. Deer Note actually has a special summon condition from hand if you play a high number of punks, and we do, so it doesn't brick at 3 like it would in a deck that's only splashing it. 3 copies of Xiamen, 2 copies of Shirakusai for Rising Carp, and then 1 apiece of Wagon and Madam Spider. We finally have good targets for both of these, so they are a pretty neat inclusion. After that, we've got 3 copies of Gizmek Orochi, the Serpentrion Sky Slasher. This is just a free body. We have enough cards in our deck and enough redundancy among those cards that we can afford banishing 8 cards from the top of our deck, and it's fantastic to get onto the field in order to make really powerful synchro bosses or overlay for something like the Zombie Vampire. After that, we've got 1 copy of Jet Synchron, necessary for the Hot Red Dragon King Calamity lines, and Shinobi Necro. This card is a breakout all-star in the new POT format. If it is banished, you can special summon it. Finally, we've got 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Ash, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, 3 Psyframe Gear Gamma and a Driver, 3 DD Crow, and then the spells: 2 Pot of Desires, a Called by the Grave, Triple Emergency Teleport, Double Punk Jam Extreme Session, the Pot of Greed field spell, and 1 copy of Surprise. Surprisingly, Punk actually has a couple of playable trap cards. You may be familiar with the one that behaves kind of like Infinite Impermanence, but Surprise destroys a monster, and in a world of Sprite, it's really good to keep your opponent's field clear of level 2s. In the extra, we've got a copy of Rising Carp, a Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity, Psychic End Punisher, 2 Amazing Dragon, 1 Chungus, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, a Chaos Ruler, a Jam Dragon Drive, a Formula Synchron, a Zombie Vampire in case things go very badly, an access code talker, a Lambda, which you can pretty easily make and turns on your Gammas even after you've executed your combo, and 1 copy of Halka. So with that, let's jump into the games. Any line that I describe to you in Deck Edit is going to pale in comparison to what this deck can do. So to show off the capacity of this unbelievable brew, let's clown on an Exosister player. Our opponent is on the Evil Swarm of 2022, and they've opened 2 hand traps, a Floodgate, and an Ellis. Let me show you what we can do. We're going to begin with a copy of Jam Extreme Session, then fire off an Emergency Teleport. Our opponent's going to Ash Blossom. Too bad for them, we drew the Zeoman. We're going to activate Zeoman's effect to get a copy of Foxy Tune, and then afterwards we're going to activate the effect of the Jam Extreme Session, drawing another E-Tally. Oh, you shouldn't have. We'll go for Madam Spider here, and surprise, we've got the trap in our hand. Afterwards, we'll go for Jam Extreme Session again, and then activate the effect of Ogre Dance and Deer Note in sequence. We're going to send this Shirakusai, summon the Deer Note, and make Chaos Ruler. We'll trigger both the Chaos Ruler and the Deer Note, summoning the Ogre Dance back and finding off the top. Oh my goodness. Words can't describe how good it feels to add a hand trap to the hand off this card. We'll go Halka Fibrax here in order to summon Shinobi Necro from deck and then make Baron de Fleur. We'll trigger the effect of the Chaos Ruler. They're going to DD Crow, but we can negate with the Baron de Fleur because I have big plans for this card. We'll go Chaos Ruler and then bring back the Shinobi Necro, at which point we'll make Chungus, activate the effect of Jam Extreme Session for an 8, set 1, and pass. In standby, we're going to activate the effect of the Baron de Fleur to cycle out for a copy of Deer Note. In main phase, we can activate the effect of the Hulk, which will both trigger the Chungus and get us a draw off the Formula Synchron, then allow us to quick synchro into the Baron we just tucked back, banishing a bunch of cards from our opponent and allowing us to contest their remaining card with the Baron. They'll concede. So it's time for game 2, and our opponent is playing Tearlament. Our deck interacts with this one in an extremely satisfying way. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We're going to begin with a copy of Pot of Desires, 2 in the opener. Sheesh, I should just play 1 already. We'll go for Zeoman, we'll activate the effect. They will Havness here, which turns off their infinite impermanence, and unfortunately they low roll the mills. They're going to have to be satisfied with a Salic. From here we can go for Foxy Tune in order to bring out a Shirakusai, then activate Shirakusai to go into a Rising Carp. We'll activate the effect of the Rising Carp in order to summon from deck a Deer Note and another Zeoman, and then we'll make a Chaos Ruler. We're going to activate the effect of the Chaos Ruler and the effect of the Deer Note in sequence, bringing back the Shirakusai, and ooh, wow, we found a Gizmek this time. We'll take the Gamma, we'll mill all those, we'll go for Halka Fibrax in order to summon another Gamma from deck. From here we can activate the Orochi in order to summon itself, and then Synchro summon a Chungus. We'll go for the Chaotic Demonic Dragon, and then activate the effect of the Shinobi Necro and the effect of the Chungus in order to banish the Salic and the Havness on field. We'll go into a Baron and pass turn. Our opponent does have access once again to the Infinite Impermanence. They will activate it on the Halka Fibrax. Strange choice, because unfortunately for them, activating the cost of the Halka Fibrax is enough to resolve the Chungus on the same chain as their Shaylin triggers. We can banish the Shaylin and the Kitkalos, leaving them with absolutely nothing. They're going to normal summon a Rhino Heart, will negate with Baron de Fleur, and they are forced to set a Polymerization and pass. God, Changing is so good here. We're going to activate Baron, pop the last remaining card. This is lethal on board, so they'll concede. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's playing Adventure Sprite, a build of the deck that I think has a ton of potential. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a ton of potential versus our grip. God, double E-Telly. Unbelievable. We'll go E-Telly here in the standby phase for Wagon. This telegraphs a lot, but I really do want to draw a couple of cards off of this Extreme Session. After that, we're going to activate the effect of the Ogre Dance in order to get a Zeoman, and because we use the Ogre Dance to get to the Zeoman, we can activate the effect of Extreme Session to cheat it out. We'll go for the Zeoman and draw a card off the Extreme Session, then afterwards we'll go for the Foxy Tune in order to get a Shirakusai. We'll activate Shirakusai, pay 600, and draw an additional card at the resolution of the summon of the Rising Carp off of Extreme Session. We're going to go for Carp here, and they do not Ash, I think hoping to Ash the Dragon, but unfortunately we can chain block that with our copy of Deer Note. They are going to be able to Ash the Halka Fibrax at resolution here. Wow, a wonderful rip off this Chaos Ruler, by the way, a Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, which is a decent time to fire off the Ash Blossom anyway. Now we can fire off the Pot of Desires without fear of Ash Blossom, and Emergency Teleport that we rip off the top to go into a copy of Baron de Fleur. We'll activate Chaos Ruler, summon it back, and I guess I'll just set 2 and pass. Our opponent draws for turn, and that is a really good one. They're going to go for Right. They're going to get themselves a copy of Fateful Adventure. Now that we can activate Hulk, we will. We'll get our Formula Synchron. That'll trigger the Fateful Adventure, and then we'll activate the second effect of Synchron in order to summon Chungus. Add resolution of this effect. Our opponent is going to normal summon a Swap Frog, special summon a blue, get a copy of Jet, and then special the Jet as well. They're going to go for the Jet in order to get a copy of Smashers. This really complicates things. It means on summon of Elf, we have to fire the Gizmek in Graveyard as they go for the Swap Frog. We'll activate the effect of the Chungus. They'll activate Smashers in response. We have to Baron here, and at resolution we're going to be able to banish both the Rite of Eremysir and the Swap Frog so they don't have access to Toad. They go for the Fateful Adventure, but they know we have the Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Afterwards they'll go for the Dracoback to bounce our Chungus, and then triple tack to take our Baron. This is the end of the game, except I do have a Nibiru in my grip, so after they go for Gigantic, we will just leave them with a big Chonkin token. We draw for turn, 4 cards left in deck. We can probably make this work. We're going to go for Extreme Session here for Foxy Tune, flip up the Surprise in order to pop our opponent's token, and go to the battle phase dealing 3,000 plus 23. 2 cards in hand, 1 is Ash Blossom. There's not a lot they're going to be able to get done, and that's not starter, so we win. So it's time for game 2, a really wacky hand from our opponent, and a pretty decent one from us, but, you know, it's Sprite. Who knows if we could win or not? They're going to begin with a copy of Starter, and God, if I had perfect information, I'd just fire it off now. But nope, they're going to go blue into Jet, activate Jet effect in order to add from deck to hand a Smashers, and things are going to get bad from here. They're going to go for the red, which is going to complicate everything. I'd love to Ash this Gigantic, but we really can't. They'll go for Swap Frog afterwards in order to send a Swap Frog before going into Elf, and then activating the effect of the Elf to bring back the Swap Frog. God, the sequencing here is so strange. They'll go for Swap Frog afterwards, and then summon out the Ronin Totem before activating Swap Frog in order to bounce the blue for next turn and end on Totally Awesome, plus a set Smashers. We draw for turn, and I mean, it's pretty good. We're going to lead with a copy of Dark Ruler and follow it up with an Emergency Teleport, but that Ash is so devastating. We'll normal summon the Shirakusai. That is prime Smasher's material. They're going to banish our monster. We'll fire off the pot. We got to find something. That is unfortunately not full combo on its own. We're going to walk over the Elf and pass it back to our opponent, but we know they have the blue in hand. They added back off the effect of the Swap Frog. They'll special summon it. Yeah, let's just go to game 3. So it's time for that all-important game 3, and I said that Adventure Sprite has a lot of potential, but it's also got a pretty high % chance of opening exactly this. Jet plus Driver plus Dracoback plus Ratio. We've opened quite well. Let's see what we can get accomplished. We're going to begin, unsurprisingly, with a copy of Ogre Dance, searching Xiamen. We're going to normal summon this copy of Xiamen. You usually don't want to normal this, but our hand is pretty good. We'll go ahead and get a Wagon, then Dear Note, in order to summon that Wagon, and then activate the effect in order to grab ourselves a copy of Extreme Session. We'll activate the effect of the Foxy Tune, pitching this Orochi in order to summon a Dear Note from deck, then going for the Chaotic Ruler, chain blocked, of course, with the Dear Note, bringing back the Wagon. We find off the top. Ew, nothing. That's not good. We'll go for Halka Fibrax here for a Shinobi Necro. This is probably still enough to carry. We're going to go for the Chaotic Ruler here and then bring back the Shinobi Necro so we can, of course, end on a Chengus, a Baron, and a Halka Fibrax. Our opponent's going to draw for turn. They're going to begin with a Swap Frog, pitching an Aramesir Search. We will go for the Halka Fibrax here, which allows us to Changing, banishing both the Swap Frog for no Ronin Totem Fuel and the Enchantress. Unfortunately, they do have the backup. We are forced to Baron this Rite of Aramesir, and thankfully they don't have another one. They're going to normal summon the Jet, equip it with a Dracoback, proceed to combat, and show us that the game's over. So we're back with the deck, and it looks good. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1. All of your end bosses are extremely difficult to get rid of. These synchros don't just resist destruction, they also have huge attack stats, which really favors you if the board state gets simplified. 2, at this point, it's pretty much a prerequisite to playing a meta deck, but I'm happy the one-card setup is so good. Xiamen is truly one of the most pushed cards of all time. And 3, it should go without saying by now, but boy howdy, Chaos Ruler is so powerful it feels unfair. I do not expect the boy to make it out of banless season. And the cons. 1, it sucks ass the DD Crow is playable. Everyone's second favorite hand trap being the bird is rough for our deck, which absolutely must summon cards from the graveyard. 2, because Punk is already so widespread as a supplementary engine in Tierlament, you're going to get a fair amount of hate for the deck out of boards just by people looking to shut down Havness. And 3, it's a little more telegraphed than I'd like. One of the upsides to both Tier and Sprite is that you can play hands completely differently in order to bluff different opens. You're always summoning Xiamen at some point here. All in all, it's an interesting deck, but time will tell if it can hang with the big boys. Honestly, I'm guessing it can't.